Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on Monday that there could be a link between Indian government agents and Nijar's killing. Nijar was the chief of Khalistan Tiger Force and was declared a terrorist by India. This has sparked tensions between both the countries, and after this allegation, India and Canada expelled diplomats. To talk more on this, I have the Federal's KS Dakshinamurthy with me. Thank you for joining. My first question to you is the expulsion of diplomats of both the countries. How could it actually impact the bilateral relationship between India and Canada, and what are the potential ramifications?
Uh, it's definitely not a good sign that this mutual expulsion has happened. Canada did the job first of expelling the Indian intelligence chief in the embassy in Canada, and then India, of course, has retaliated by expelling a senior Canadian diplomat. Now, why did this happen? It's because of Canada's claim that Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Khalistani activist who was killed in June, they say that they have found a link to his killing and with the Indian intelligence. So, and they are pretty upset, and they say that it goes against the action goes against Canadian sovereignty. So in response, Canada retaliated. So the point here is that it hasn't happened. This kind of a situation hasn't come about suddenly. There has been, over the last few months, there has been a kind of a gradual, kind of a cooling of relations between the two countries because of the increase in Khalistani activities in Canada. And India's grouse is that Canada is not doing anything to curb the activities of the Khalistanis, who the Indian government, which the Indian government see as an anti-India activity, and they are surprised or they are shocked, and they say that Canada should intervene and prevent this from happening.
Is there a resurgence of Khalistan in Canada right now? And is that why there has been a gradual cooling of activities, like you mentioned before, between India and Canada?
Yeah. So what has happened is, if you if anyone has traced the Khalistani activities in Canada, it had actually almost come to a halt. In fact, the activities were at its minimum. So in 2017 or thereabouts, there was this attempt to again whip up the Khalistani sentiments and activism in Canada and in North America. And what these organizations called Sikhs for Justice. So what they did was they whipped up this Khalistani sentiment, and they again propped up this issue, and they have gone in for what they are calling as a referendum on the issue, and they've been trying to internationalize it. So there have been post that. So subsequently, there have been the activities of the Khalistanis, pro-Khalistanis in Canada have gone up, not only in Canada, even in North America, many cities of North America. There have been rallies, there have been demonstrations, and there have been attempts by the Khalistani groups to somehow whip up the issue and again bring it to the fore, because it had almost become non-existent after the height of the Khalistani movement in the 1980s. And when during so it's close to 40 years, it was almost died down after the Operation Blue Star, Operation Black Thunder, and all that. And so this kind of a issue, the Khalistan issue across the world, in fact, even in Australia, recently there was some kind of a clash between pro-India groups and the Khalistani groups, and which led to the police having to intervene and all that. So this is kind of slowly spreading around, and Canada says that they are not going to come in the way of the Khalistan activists, because they say it's on the grounds of freedom of expression. As far as India is concerned, they say that, well, it could be freedom of expression, but it is still an anti-India activity, and the Canadian government is obliged to curb it. So this back and forth has been going on. So in the recent G20 summit between the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wanted to have a kind of a summit meeting or a leaders meeting with Prime Minister Modi. India apparently, according to reports, refused to have a full-fledged meeting, and they only managed to meet on the sidelines. And during this meeting, it appears that Trudeau, expressed his concerns and said that the death of Nijar, the killing of Nijar, had been linked to Indian intelligence. And the Prime Minister Modi was supposed to have told him that India is very upset with this fact that Canada is not doing anything to rein in Khalistani militants. And so there was this kind of a friction that was there. And to make it worse, there was this issue of his Trudeau's plane that got stuck in aircraft that got stuck in Delhi. And it took a few days for the repairs to happen and for him to leave. So that, of course, it had nothing to do with this issue. But still, it came as a unexpected dampener. It further dampened the situation between, or the relations between the two.
So yeah, that was supposed to be my next question about the relationship between both the countries. How might Trudeau's allegations actually affect India-Canada diplomatic relations and cooperation in counter-terrorism efforts?
So basically, what is happening here is that if you take Canada, the Sikh community is a very, very powerful migrant or immigrant community in Canada, and historically they have played a big role. And many Sikhs went to Canada during the time of the British, and today there are several ministers in the Trudeau government who are Sikhs, and with even some of them with kind of known pro Khalistan kind of leanings. And also for Trudeau, the Sikh community is a big vote bank, in Canada. So it is not easy for him to just clamp down on them. And so, on what grounds will he, will he clamp down on the group? So the point is, I'm sure if the Canadian government wants to, they can. But point is, it's not happening. So, and as far as India is concerned, India is looking at the situation. It's getting worse. For instance, if you recollect, in a few months ago, you had this Amritpal Singh who was on the run and who was a Khalistani from Canada who was in India. And, there were issues with him. And then eventually, of course, he surrendered and, he was captured and is now in custody. But the point here is that, again, it kind of increased the tempo or the tempers in Punjab and in Canada. And before that, if you recollect, this during the farmers' movement, there was an attempt by sections in the Indian government to project it as some kind of a Khalistani link, which probably they did it for political reasons, but it was a very poor, a poor strategy, because it unnecessarily again, brought Khalistan to the fore. So some of these events have, what it has managed to do is to bring Khalistan up there, when it was actually very much in the back burner and it was probably already frozen in time, but it's now again come back to the fore. And this is going to be a very tricky issue between India and Canada, who otherwise historically have had they have very good relations. I mean, India, the US, West, India has good relations, and with Canada particularly, there have been almost no tensions except for this Khalistan issue. Number one. And there are a lot of Indian migrants today in Canada. There are many of them in the queue. Many of them are going and settling in Canada. So the Indian diaspora is massive in Canada. And top of it, the Sikh community is even, very dominant. So there is too much at stake between India and Canada to let the relationship deteriorate. It requires a certain kind of maturity in both governments. And they must come to the table and in some manner or the other resolve this issue and put an end to this, this problem. Otherwise, I'm afraid it's just going to get worse.
Actually, what you said just now was supposed to be my last question. So, in your opinion, how do you think both countries should, work to ensure accurate information exchange and prevent such misunderstandings in the future?
I mean, some of these issues are very difficult, and then when they get into a tangle, it becomes even more difficult to unravel them. So it requires a certain level of maturity, like I said, for both the governments to examine, what is at stake. For instance, you find that, there is a Canadian trade mission to India that has been stopped, and India also has stopped discussion on, furthering trade between the two countries. So it is kind of edging towards a freeze of in relations. And if there are any other instances or incidences that may happen, which which revolve around the issue of Khalistan, or if the Khalistan activists, try to, they get more active there, if there is some kind of a repercussion in India, I'm afraid that things will go further south.
Okay. Thank you for your inputs. Viewers, this is a developing story. So, for more inputs and for updates on this, stay tuned with us. Visit our website, www.thefederal.com, and also follow us on our social media pages.